You will have noticed that I spoke of the hero of our story all the time as a young man or a youngster, without using his name. But in doing this, I am only following the troubadour, Chrétien de Troyes, who also calls his hero for the first chapters of the book, young man. And there is a good reason for this, because this young man does not know his own name. And this comes out in the next events of the story, which I shall now relate. The young man, decked out in the fool's garb, had been made by his mother, mounted his old mare, and rode happily through the forest and then out into a world of plowed fields and villages that he had never seen before. From time to time he met other people on the road, a peasant driving a mule, a merchant in a horse-drawn cart. They looked with some surprise at this fellow in a fool's dress, and they smiled at him. But he took this only as a sign of friendliness, and he greeted them with the words, "I bid you a good journey, as my mother has told me," which made them smile even more. But none of them thought of marking one who was obviously uneducated. And then the road he followed led them through a mountain pass, and riding down a slope he heard a woman's voice, but it was a sound of wailing and crying and sobbing. What could this be? Driven by pity as much as by curiosity, the young man turned his horse in the direction of the voice. Coming round a bend of the path, he saw a young woman sitting on a rock. In her lap was the body of a man, with the stiffness of his limbs indicating he was dead. The young man approached the crying woman and said, "Lady, my mother told me to offer my services to any woman in distress, so let me help you in your misfortune." The woman lifted her head, but she only looked at him in silence. Unabashed, the young man continued, "Tell me, who was it that killed this knight that you mourn? Tell me who it is, and I promise you the murderer shall not escape from my spears. I shall make him pay for it with his life, and for the grief he has caused you." It must have seemed strange to the woman that this lad, without any shield or armor, carrying no better weapon than a hunting spear, offered to go and slay an enemy who was bound to be superior in arms and experience. But she recognized as well that it was not youthful boasting that had moved this young man, but the true spirit of chivalry. And she answered, "My young friend, I honor your good intention, but there is no call for you, a stranger, to revenge the death of this knight, who was betrothed to me, who was my bridegroom. He for whom I grieve was not murdered, but slain in open battle, face to face with the enemy. But you have a noble heart to offer yourself to the service of a stranger. Tell me, what is your name?" "Good son, dear son, that was the name by which my mother called me," answered the young man. At these words, the young man looked long and silently at him, and when she spoke again, there was a different tone in her voice. "Is this the only name you know?" she asked. "It is indeed, and what better name could I be called than by my mother as a good son and dear son?" said the young man, a little impatient. Again the woman looked at him in silence before she said, "Well, do I know her who called her child by these names? For she is my aunt, Queen Herzeloida, who went to hide herself and her little son in the forest many years ago. Queen Herzeloida was your mother's name, and I am your cousin, Sigrun. But you too have a name, dear cousin, given to you when you were born, and may God make it a name to be honored. Your name is Parsifal." "So I am Parsifal," said the young man in wonder. But cousin, Sigun, you called my mother Queen Herzeloida. Is she a queen? Yes, Parsifal, because your father, the noble Gameret, was the king of the land of Norgals, and when he and your elder brothers lost their lives in combat, and when your mother, Herzeloida, took refuge in the forest, this knight who now lies dead in my arms, my bridegroom, took it upon himself the task of holding and defending it until the true heir, you, Parsifal, could come and wear the crown. It was your land he defended, and it was whilst fighting against a foreign invader that he, whom I loved, lost his life. Then it is my duty to avenge him and regain my kingdom, cried Parsifal. Sigun, you must tell me, which of the roads that meet here shall lead me to the enemy? I shall not rest until justice is done and my kingdom is restored. But Sigun knew only too well the outcome would be if this ignorant lad, with unused to the arts of fighting and armed with nothing better than a short throwing spear, would challenge well-trained fighting men. And so she pointed to a path that would lead Parsifal in the opposite direction, a path that would take him to the land of King Arthur. Sigun refused to leave her place in the mountains. She refused to leave her bridegroom's body. She told Parsifal that she had attendants she could call when she wanted them, but that she wished to remain alone with her grief with her dead knight. Parsifal rode away on the path that Sigun had shown him, richer by the name now that he learned, and poorer by the kingdom that should have been his inheritance that had been lost. A few hours later, hunger and tiredness made him look for shelter, and he was glad to find a peasant who, poor as he was, would not refuse hospitality to a lonely stranger. When Parsifal learned from the man that he was in the realm of King Arthur, everything else, Sigun, dead knight, his father's kingdom, was forgotten. He had only one desire now, to reach King Arthur's court as soon as possible so that he may be made a knight. And so the next morning, at Parsifal's pleading, the peasant took him to the city where King Arthur and the knights of the Round Table were in residence. But when they saw the city before them, the peasant took his leave for. He said, "The courtiers are all so high and mighty that they would take offense if the likes of me would get near them." And so Parsifal, in his fool's clothing, got on his old mare, rode into the King Arthur's city. Having never seen the city, he stared at all the houses and the great number of people in the streets, and hardly noticed as they all stared back at him in amusement. Nor was young Parsifal aware that he knew nothing of the courtly manners, of any kind of manners at all. A wild man from a far-off mountain forest would have known as much of these things as Parsifal would have. Blissfully unaware of his ignorance, Parsifal rode on, full of eager expectations, until he reached a meadow. Beyond the meadow, he saw the walls girding a great building, the residence of King Arthur. Parsifal's heart beat faster and faster as he saw the place where all his dreams would be fulfilled. But as he looked with shining eyes at the building, far greater than he had ever imagined, there came a knight, riding out through one of the gates in the wall and galloping towards Parsifal. And what a knight he was! His armor was red as a fire, and his shield too was as red as flame. Red were his horse's trappings, and even the horse himself was a brown red in color. The shaft of his spear, the scabbard of his sword, the reins he held, were all red. As the red knight came nearer, Parsifal saw that he carried one hand a golden goblet, a golden cup. Parsifal was too dumbfounded to speak when the splendid red apparition approached him, but the red knight reined his horse in and addressed the speechless youth. "Blessed be the mother that gave you such good looks. You will find much joy in life, but you will also know grief and pain and sorrow." Parsifal was hardly prepared for such a prophecy, but before he could gather his wits, the knight continued, "You are on your way to King Arthur, and I charge you to give him a message from me." "I will, good sir," said Parsifal with effort. "What is your message?" "You must know," said the Red Knight. My name is Ither, and I lay claim of the land of King Arthur. They should be mine by my rights, they are not his. In token of my claim, I have just walked into the hall where King Arthur and his knights are taking their meal, and I took his golden goblet that stood, filled with wine, before the king. I took it from the table, and I am sorry to say, as I took it, I spilled the wine on Queen Guinevere. But though I regret this mishap to the queen, it is but little account. What matters is that by any custom, he who takes a goblet from the king's table announces thereby his claim to the kingdom, and that is what I've done. Now, go back and tell King Arthur, and tell him that I wait here for his best knight to come and fight me for this cup. If I win, this land is mine. The proud Arthur must swear obedience to me as his lord. If I lose, he can keep his cup and his kingdom. Now go, my good lad, and give him this message." Parsifal, full of wonder about the ways of knights and full of admiration for the red armor of the knight, cried, "I will, sir, Ither," and rode his horse at top speed to the walls of the palace, through the gate, into the forecourt. Here a number of pages stood together, and one of them, Evenet by name, came and asked his business. "My business is with King Arthur," said Parsifal. "Now show me the hall where he is at his meal." "Well, the hall is on the ground floor, and the great arch over there is the entrance," said Evenet. He might have been less forthcoming with his information if he had known what kind of visitor this was. Parsifal then rode through the entrance and straight into the great hall, where the throng of knights and ladies were all sitting at the tables. There they were eating and drinking, and not a little surprised when a horse and rider appeared in their midst. Parsifal surveyed this great room and feasting throng calmly from his elevated position and said, "God keep all of you, brave knights and fair ladies. I give you my greeting, as my mother told me I should." By now, all faces in the hall were turned towards him, but he continued, in his clear voice, "I don't know which one of you is King Arthur, for you all look like kings to me, but I have a message for him. Ither, the Red Knight, who took the golden cup, is waiting in the meadow outside for your best knight to come and fight him for the cup. He says he's sorry for spilling wine on the queen. I only wish that I had all the red clothes he has on him. They are just what I would like to wear as a knight." Then when he had spoken, there was great babble of voices in the hall. The ladies said how handsome he was. The knight said he looked strong and fit for any fight, and they all wondered if he was right in his mind to ride into King Arthur's banquet hall in such a fool's outfit. But then King Arthur raised his voice and said, "I am the king, and I thank you for this message. The Red Knight's insult shall not go unpunished, and every knight of the Round Table will be eager for the task of dealing with the man who dares to claim my kingdom." "No," said Parsifal, to everyone's surprise. "I want the Red Knight's armor. I want his horse, and I want his weapon. Therefore let me go, and I shall fight him." And then Sir Kay, one of Arthur's knights, shouted furiously, "You empty-headed young fool! Who are you to demand such honor? You nitwit! It would serve you right to be knocked out right by the Red Knight. Perhaps he will knock some sense into your head. Yes, go and fight him, go, and go get his armor, if you can," laughing. But now King Arthur intervened. "Sir Kay, do not speak in this manner to a youngster whose only fault is his ignorance. And you, my young friend, do not wish for things that only an older man with more experience of combat can attain. Forget the Red Knight's splendid armor, and be satisfied with the one I might give you. Come, dismount from your horse, and leave the Red Knight to someone better to deal with him." Parsifal, burning with desire for the red armor, and stung by the insults of Sir Kay, answered, "No, I will not dismount, for he who awaits outside is also on his horse, and I want to ride out and fight him, and I don't want any other armor or weapon or horse but his. Give me the Red Knight's armor, King Arthur." "Boy, you are stubborn as you are young and ignorant," said the king. "Fine, have it your own way. The red armor shall be yours, if you can get it, and may heaven protect you, that you suffer no great injury in this foolish attempt." "Thank you," cried Parsifal, as he turned to his horse and to ride out. Now there was a lady in the hall who had never laughed in all her life. And there was a saying in the king's court that she would laugh once when she saw a knight who would attain the highest honor of all. But though she had seen many and many great famous knights, Sir Launcelot, Sir Gawain, and all the rest of the Round Table, she neither laughed nor smiled. But as Parsifal came up on his old mare and his patched-up old fool's outfit, rode through the halls to encounter the Red Knight, he passed the table where this young lady was sitting, and she looked at him and burst out laughing. Sir Kay, the knight who had been so angry with Parsifal, was sitting next to her. When he saw this woman, who had never laughed, shaking with laughter at the sight of Parsifal, he remembered what the laughter meant. He was so furious he forgot his knightly manners and shouted at her, "You had no laughter or smile for the best of knights of this entire court, and now you laugh at this young nitwit?" And in his fit of temper he did something that was against all the rules of knighthood. He struck a woman in her face. Parsifal saw it and stared with the greatest astonishment. How could a man, a knight, strike a woman? And then another knight at this table said to him, "She suffers for your sake. Her laughter marked you as the knight who will attain the highest honor." Parsifal said, "I can't not wait to make the man who hurt her and who insulted me pay for his behavior. Unworthy of a knight for sure, and one day he will regret it." And so he rode out of the palace to the meadow where Uther was, the Red Knight, and was waiting there with his golden cup. As Parsifal turned his head to give a last look at the palace which had looked so expectantly when he came, and where he had been met with insults and rude behavior, he saw somebody coming after him. It was Evenet, the page who had shown him the entrance to the great hall of the people, high and low in King Arthur's hall. Only the page felt enough concern to come along to see how Parsifal would fare at the hands of the Red Knight. And so Parsifal, now accompanied by the page, rode on to his meeting with the Red Knight.